Good evening. Welcome to this special webinar being organized by Workplace Trends India, where we're going to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on commercial real estate. Now, we're still waiting for participants to join in, but if you have already joined in, I suggest all of you switch to the gallery view. This way you get the best out of this webinar. And for all those who are attending this webinar, we'd like to tell you that this is the second episode in the series of webinars that we are organizing to get leaders to share their insights, their tips and tricks to clear the clouds of uncertainty when it comes to what is happening now and how to plan for the future. Now, the lockdown has forced employees to work from home. While this is forced right now, will this become a feasible option that companies look to adopt in the future when things come back to normal? And will they do this out of their own choice? If yes, what happens to offices and commercial real estate? This is what we are going to be discussing in this webinar, and we welcome all of you to this webinar. So the request is to all participants to start asking questions. If you do have questions, once you hear our experts, you can start typing them into the Q&A box, and we will answer as many questions as possible. We are very lucky to have two senior leaders from the industry joining us today to discuss this issue of the impact of COVID-19 on commercial real estate. We are joined by Ramesh, Nair, the CEO and country head of JLL India. Jones Lang LaSalle is a Fortune 500 company into the financial and professional services space, specializing in real estate. Ramesh is responsible for overall direction, strategy, and growth of JLL in India. He has over 2 decades of diversified and hands-on professional experience in most facets of the real estate business. Ramesh is also the member of the Asia Pacific Board and J8, a group of JLL's 8 largest countries in terms of profit and revenues globally. Ramesh also chairs the India Leadership Council of JLL India, and when it comes to his education, he has been to the bluest of blue Ivy League schools in the world. He holds an advanced management program from Harvard Business School. He has completed a global leadership program from Stanford University Graduate School of Business and a global advanced management program from Kellogg Business School and ISB. We are also very privileged to have with us Sanjay Baurai. He is Managing Director, Workplace Solutions for Accenture India. Sanjay is responsible for corporate real estate portfolio management and real estate strategy, growth plans and strategy, workplace design and delivery, multi-million-dollar workplace operations and budgets. Ramesh and Sanjay, welcome to the webinar.
Thank you.
Workplace Trends is a community-based and knowledge-sharing platform which organizes intelligent, pitch-free conferences and specializes in current thinking and upcoming trends for the workplace, commercial real estate, leadership, and learning environment. Now, we've had a successful event in November in Hyatt Delhi, where we had 2 union ministers address attendees, and we had 25 CEOs and 10 global influencers speaking to a 400 plus audience of senior executives. Workplace Trends India is now organizing a series of webinars using technology to bring you insights and wisdom of thought leaders even during this lockdown. We are very happy to have with us Maggie Prokopai. She is co-founder and owner of Workplace Trends series of conferences, and she is with us right now. And we also have Tushar Mittal, the founding partner of Workplace Trends India, who is also with us. Maggie, Tushar, hi, thanks for joining us. Tushar, again, very excited about the second episode of this webinar.
Thank you, Anisha. Thank you for everyone to registering and attending this conference. I would like to thank you again, extending your support. We have got around 1,700 registrations for this webinar. It is, I think, India's first largest real estate conference, which has 1,700 people registered for one conference. Already, I can see on the panel, 900 people have already joined almost. And I would like to, before we start this conference, I would like to give you little background about the audience. We have around 300 CEOs, managing director, MDs from different companies, from IPCs, from project management companies, and different set of financial companies. And we have around 700 manager level people in different verticals, and VPs and directors, around 300 people. Again, we have VPs and directors. So total 1600, 1700 registration we got. Now, I would like to request Maggie to give welcome note to Ramesh and Sanjay and to all our audience. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Tushar. It's an absolute pleasure to join you today, and thank you, Sanjay and Ramesh, for agreeing to take part, and Anisha for hosting. It's an absolute pleasure to be with you all the way. I'm based in the UK. Workplace Trends operates globally. Most of our events are in the UK, but at the moment we are expanding, and with Tushar's help, we're in India now, who's our founding partner, and we ran a brilliant conference last November. We're expanding now as well in Spain later this year, hopefully. Also Copenhagen, United States, Australia. So it's all looking really positive. And I kind of just want to say, I think it's an extraordinary time at the moment, and if we can just stay strong, and everyone, as they keep saying, we're all in this together, I think we can come out of this situation stronger and more focused and more purposeful, and probably quite a bit wiser. I think we can make positive things happen out of our current situation. So I'm really looking forward to hearing the discussion today. And thank you, Tushar, for inviting me to say a few words.
Thank you, Maggie. And I would like to welcome Abhishek Goenka from Coworks, Abhishek, Mr. Will George from Global Head, Rio Tinto, and a lot of global occupiers also on the call. Mr. Manish Periwal from Pioneer Developer, Parito Singh from Sienna, and Mr. Yash Gupta from Heinz, and a lot of other occupiers. Almost 250 occupiers are also on the webinar. Anisha, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Maggie. Thank you, Tushar. So good to hear from you. And really, we have to congratulate Workplace Trends for not, letting us get into a stupor. Things are shut. It's a lockdown. So let's just sit back and do nothing. This is a great platform to listen in from leaders on how they're preparing for tomorrow, given our today. Thank you so much, Maggie. Thank you, Tushar. The post-COVID world has, it's completely different. COVID has thrown our life completely off course, and it has set a wet blanket on the booming office real estate sector of the country. Now, work from home has been forced upon us now, on all employees, because of the lockdown. Offices are completely empty. Now, will employees rush back into familiar office cubicles when the situation goes back to normal? Will demand for new offices keep on increasing in 2020 and the years ahead? Or will there be a realignment? Has Corona caused a permanent reset on human behavior where work from the safety of one's home will become the new normal? These are some of the issues that we would like to discuss today. And I'm going to start with Ramesh. Ramesh, people work hard in their lives. They study, they go to good business schools, they work their way up the corporate ladder. And about a month back, suddenly views from the corner office have been replaced by a living room or a wall hanging in the dining room. Has this new world sunk in for you?
There's so many variables which is tough to predict today, but still Sanjay and me will try and give it a shot in terms of how things are going to, we hope things will evolve, but everything is dependent on one variable. When will people really get back to work? This is not the May 3rd date, but when will people really be comfortable getting back to offices? The other big variable is when is a cure going to be found? When will people be able to have medicines and get all right from the virus? So there's so many different things. We don't have control.
My question, Ramesh, was actually if you are comfortable in your current situation, not in your cubicle, not in your corner office, but on your sofa in your house.
Getting there. It's not easy. Been 3.5, nearly 4 weeks today, and I'm sure everyone around in this call, everyone is reasonably getting comfortable working from home. So.
But do you think that, even Maggie spoke about, coming out more purposeful from this entire experience? So do you think that, human behavior will change? We can't predict with certainty when are we going to have a vaccination, when will we find a cure, but we are changing how we see the world, how we react to things, what we hold more dear. Do you think they'll prefer to work from home, which is safe, and they'll save on the commuting time? Companies too may, finally go ahead and like this idea because they will conserve cash and save on office rents. So when it comes to the demand for commercial real estate, how do you see the impact, say in the shorter term, where we are seeing a complete, stalling, industry shut, no companies are open, offices are empty, and to the medium and longer term, could there be a seismic shift in the demand for commercial real estate in the longer term as well? And give us a perspective in the short term as well.
Sure, I'm planning to cover that. Can I start my session?
Yes, please.
Sure. So, like I said, there's so many different variables around which is dependent on timelines. Still, Sanjay and me will give it a shot to try and see to cover some of these points. So, what I did first was went back to the last big event, which was very similar, which was the global financial crisis of 2008-9. We don't know the intensity difference between this one and that one, but that was a big, intense event. And looked at some of my notes. What were corporate occupiers doing back then when GFC suddenly hit? Lehman happened in September 2008. And what were the next few months or the next few quarters? What typically happened in the industry? I thought that'll at least set a small benchmark. Again, let me repeat it. It's going to be very tough to predict and to forecast at this kind of a time. 1 month back, we wouldn't have been even be having a conference like this, but some benchmark in terms of back to basics of what was happening back then. I remember some of those things back then. I keep notes of how all those meetings we used to have with clients. That is the first time a lot of clients started talking about dark spaces. Till then, clients were not so focused. Used to be big space standards, 125, 130 square foot per person. Space standards started coming down. So dark space audits, people started looking very closely at all real estate space which was getting vacant. Another big trend we saw was everybody started reviewing their non-core assets. People started creating lists. Okay, these real estate assets are core, these real estate assets are not core, and started eliminating underutilized space. Another trend we saw, surprisingly, and I'd actually forgotten about it. Those are the times companies actually even started asking us, can we start working from homes? There was no virus back then, but people still started asking us, is there a work from home policy? So that was the beginning of work from home policies, which a lot of companies, many companies back then started focusing on sustainability. Till then, sustainability was not a big deal. 2008 is when that started. Many companies started looking at providers like us to do energy audits for them. From a decision making, I remember that's when lean decision making processes started coming in. Companies started looking at a lot more discipline in terms of the corporate real estate function. Surprising. I've been in part of many meetings back then in 8 and 9 where companies came to us and said, I don't want to be in this grade A plus super nice quality buildings. I don't mind even being in a B plus grade building as long as I can save some money. Sounds surprising now, but back then many discussions around that. A lot of companies at that time decided to delay relocations by doing short-term extensions to their leases. That was another big trend we saw. At the portfolio level, I thought 2008-9 events were what empowered the corporate real estate heads to drive costs. The corporate real estate as a function became very important in an organization. It was not a very important function till then. People used to call it admin, all that, especially in India. And the corporate real estate function started becoming really strong. And they started getting empowered. I think That's the time we also started seeing the corporate real estate function evolve as a relationship management function between the businesses and the entire real estate organization. So that's another big change we saw. A lot of KPIs started coming in back then in the entire CRE organization. Companies started looking at how can they start using the technology of partners from off the shelf to improve their productivity. What did companies do back then? We started seeing the CRE organization collect data. Till then, data used to be in multiple places. People used to store data in one Excel sheet, somewhere there, some notebook. Data started coming. Everybody started collecting data and putting the data in order. That's a big change which happened post 2008. Everybody started doing scenario planning. What happens if my business is at 80%, 70%? What if suddenly there's a large cut of workforce? Scenario planning started becoming very important. Companies started looking very, very closely at all the leases. Many companies tried restructuring their leases. Companies started reconfiguring their office spaces. This is a trend we saw very closely. Many companies looked at evaluating a sale and lease backs. If I'm sitting on a large asset, is there an opportunity to sell and lease back? Again, a big trend we saw back in 8-9. What else did we see? Clients started looking at processes to capture value from leased asset. It was just not, okay, this is not my asset, I've just leased it, but they started looking closely at those assets to look for value around that. Every lease, every property, everyone started mining that lease portfolio to look for savings, going through every single clause of the contract in the lease portfolio. People started selling, clients started selling surplus assets. There were a lot of inquiries to companies like us to look at, is there an opportunity to restructure leases? All types of vacancies started, like shadow vacancies and storage vacancies, and everybody started looking at it very, very closely. And companies back then were giving very minimal growth projections, especially spaces which was not filled up. So that's another big trend we saw. So some of those things, it's always good to kind of go back and check how things were, because there are a lot of learnings we can get from old things, and we tend to forget very fast. And again, one aspect we heard in 2001, I remember post September 11, a lot of people in US decided that they will never take a flight again in their lives. After September 11, all of us remember that image of those few aircrafts coming and crashing on the World Trade Center. Many Americans at that time had said that we will never take a airline fly ever again in our lives. And look at what happened. So there's a lot of panic now, but public memory is also short. Habits will change, and people will evolve, and life will move on. There are a lot of internal and external benchmarking which started happening post 2008, and a lot more focus on what is core to me and what is not core to me, and what should be the financial strategies for each one of these assets. A lot more deep diving, hands-on heads in real estate assets. Now let's come back to what's happening now. What have we seen in the last 3 to 4 weeks in the office thing? Again, I will say it's very easy for me to kind of sit here and predict and forecast. But again, there's so many decision variables which can go wrong depending on different timelines. That's the second time I'm saying, but this is just an attempt to see where the industry is heading. What we've seen is occupiers haven't kind of reacted knee-jerk. The office occupiers across the country, today close to 600 million square feet of office occupiers in India. But they've started evaluating what are the different opportunities in front of them. They are waiting and watching how things will evolve. The first few weeks, the focus has fully been on safety of employees and getting people to work from home. That's been the key focus areas for corporates. We believe the next few weeks, a lot of corporates and the last 3-4 weeks, a lot of corporates will hit the pause button, not the cancel button, pausing with regards to decision making, That's something which is happening and already happening. Under construction projects is expected to get delayed. 2-3 reasons. Liquidity will become a challenge. Second is workers. A lot of migrant workers, as soon as lockdown ends and transportation comes in, they would take the first train or first bus to get back to their home states. A lot of construction labor comes from states like UP, Bihar, Orissa. They will go back, and you're not going to get them back in 2 weeks when things start getting normal, or 1 month when things start getting normal. Normally, what we have seen is, especially post demonetization, when they go back, they kind of take at least 3 months to kind of come back. So that's something which is going to delay construction, a lot of commercial projects across the country. Also, one needs to remember that a lot of interiors, materials, fit outs comes from China and Southeast Asia. So there is that connection also with regards to supply chain, where that supply chain issues have been broken right now, and that needs to get fixed, which will further cause delay. We've seen a new trend in the last couple of weeks, wherein companies are asking us for hotel space from a BCP point of view. Can I take 50 rooms where I can put people and get them to work? So that's a new trend which I've seen for the first time. Some of the co-working players have started asking for relief from landlords. Tenants are evaluating, although there's not been any, I would say, any confrontational view, but tenants are beginning to evaluate what are the force majeure clauses, looking for rent abatements, but early days there. What do we think will happen in the medium term? Medium term meaning the next 3 to 4 months. We believe the biggest challenges which will face the industry is going to be delayed decision making. Decisions are going to get delayed. Time is money. It's going to take longer time. And capital expenditures, a lot of companies will have challenges on the capital expenditure front. Many people would want the landlords to do the capital expenditure. Many people will want to delay capital expenditure. So these are the two big challenges we see in the medium term over the next 3 to 4 months. Delayed decision making and companies wanting to delay, not do capex. We also believe occupiers with expansion plans who are not driven by an event date will press the pause button and will become a lot more cautious. For leases under discussions, which are still not yet reached the conclusion stage, I believe landlords will give a few freebies to expedite discussions and close the transactions. Landlords will definitely not waste time, and they will make sure deals are getting closed. We believe a new trend will emerge, but that's again a trend we saw back in 2008. The trend of renewing, extending, and blending. What we mean by extending and blending is where occupiers go back to the landlords and tell them, see, my lease is coming up for renewal in the next 1 year, and rentals, as per the contract, this is a 15% or a 12% escalation. We'll see that a lot of tenants will come back to landlords and say, okay, can we talk about that? I like you, I like your building, I like your project, I want to stay here, but I don't think I will be able to pay that renewal escalation amount. And the landlord will come back and say, okay, you stay here, but give me a longer lock-in, I will reduce that escalation. So that's something which we believe will begin to happen. Beginning to start getting inquiries from tenants for a lease restructuring thing, but early days around that. A lot of occupiers are telling us they want to preserve cash and spend less on capex, like I mentioned. Going forward, we also believe that occupiers will ask for longer rent-free periods for obvious reasons, because fit-outs are going to take longer. There are no enough material, not enough labor available. So they will ask that. We still haven't seen in the last 4 weeks any distressed space come into the market. That's taking. That's obviously going to take some time. Too early to say that. Please don't hold me to this, but very early estimates. That I think demand for this year, absorption for this year could slow down at least 20-25% compared to last year. Similarly, we believe supply will also get pushed from this year to next year. I think around 25% of the supply will move towards next year. Again, these are very early forecast based on what we have seen in the next 1 month. If this thing continues for next 2-3 months, we'll be making very different forecasts. Force majeure and rent abatement clauses, which were just normal clauses there, which nobody used to pay attention to, will be very, very fiercely debated going forward. That's something we believe will happen. We are beginning to hear quite a few of our clients actually say that we are not going to go back to our office on May 3rd or May 4th when the government opens up the lockdown. We're going to wait and watch. We're going to encourage employees to work from homes, maybe make them work from home till end of May, and then look at what should be done. So I think it's wrong to expect to see everyone back in work in first week of May. CapEx, again, we believe a lot of people will think hard before making any investments. What do we expect to happen in the long term? In the long term, we believe office sector will be the first to recover from every downturn. We studied a lot of downturns over the years in different countries. And the asset class which bounces back first is always the office asset class. We believe going forward, there will be softer rental growth. We are not going to, last 6-7 years, we've been seeing all the key office markets in the country grow between 3 to 8% per annum in terms of rentals. I don't think we're going to be seeing that. There'll be accelerated work from home policies, which companies will want to. I believe the new concept of de-densification. Till now, everybody has been talking about densifying the spaces. I think the opposite, the de-densification will happen. That's something which is we believe will happen. People will want to declutter their office spaces. There will be a lot more focus going forward on safety, on health, and on wellness. Space utilization metrics will change. A lot of companies used to say that, okay, I'm using so much, it's 50 square foot, 60 square foot, 70 square foot. I think that's going to be changing. So office utilization rates will fall. Landlords who have exposure to short-term leases will be vulnerable, will have challenges in terms of cash flows. That's something which is important. I think the rising employment in new sectors, which will do well. Everybody knows that e-commerce is going to be doing well going forward. The pharma sector will do well. FMCG will do well. New sectors like health analytics, medical technology, the OTT companies, which are already doing reasonably well, they will do better. I think the demand coming from these companies will kind of neutralize any sudden reduction from work from home. There will be a lot more focus on cleaning, hygiene. There will be a lot more distancing, which one will look at. The social distancing will become a norm within offices. Employees will demand for increased choices within the office where they can work out of. We also believe there will be strong demand for buildings which can offer sustainability and wellness. That's something again which we see will happen. There'll be a lot more focus on quality property management of buildings in common areas and within. That's something which is going to be more important than ever before. I believe, I could be totally wrong, there could be a new trend that till now the companies last 10 years were focusing on consolidation of offices. I think the companies may start looking at, can we split offices instead of having one massive 300,000 square feet? Can I split it into 150,000 into two different zones within the same city? That could be a trend, because as people look very, very closely at business continuity planning. Business continuity planning and review will become a very, very key component of any strategic and become any strategy session will become forefront of any of these corporate activities going forward. We believe some companies will end up losing contracts with overseas partners, which will lead to surrender of spaces. Too early days, not yet started, but that is expected to happen. Today, the co-working industry, there are close to 400 players. It will get highly consolidated. I think there may be 20 players will be left. And a lot of these co-working operators, there's 400 of them, who will end up giving back their spaces back to the landlords. And I think landlords will take that space up and operate it on their own. There will be greater demand for flexible working spaces from a neighborhood as companies start worrying about people taking public transport to reach them. Companies may look at, okay, can I create smaller spaces in different parts of the city where my employees can get there faster and work from there when they want to actually work in an office. There would be specific areas within offices, we believe, which would focus on collaboration, which would focus on learning, which will have breathing spaces. So before everything used to be mixed, now I think there will be various zones within the office where someone wants to just come collaborate, go and go back home. So that's something of a trend which can happen. We don't believe that work from home will immediately have a big impact again. One is I mentioned about newer industries coming, which will take care of the demand. The second is over the last few years, 10 years, we've driven utilization and densification so much that there's not much of space left for a very limited excess space available, because most companies have very optimized portfolios currently. What again do we feel? Some of the things which I thought is very important is to look from our learnings from China. I spoke to our senior leaders in China. One reason we've been doing that proactively in the last 2-3 weeks has been China is around 6 to 7 weeks ahead of our curves. It's a different country, run very differently, but at least some learnings if you can get from there. I'm not saying everything that's happening in China is going to happen in India in 7 weeks time, but at least some, like I said, some learnings from 2008. Similarly, some learnings from China in the last 7-8 weeks. The good news is in China, 70 to 80% of the employees are back to work. Everyone is wearing a mask. Traffic is getting very bad in Chinese in the big cities in China, because most people are preferring to drive to work. They don't want to take public transport, worrying about the disease spreading. A lot of shopping malls, most shopping malls are open. Chinese companies are being very active on the real estate front. On one side, the multinationals are adopting a conservative approach, while a lot of Chinese local companies are coming back to us and saying, okay, this is a good time to get a good deal. Chinese finance companies, Chinese tech companies are saying this is a good time to do deals. Let me crack a deal now. There's still, even though people are working in offices, a lot of external meetings are not happening. It's still happening online, so lesser face-to-face meetings. We've heard about developers and landlords do property inspections through virtual reality tools and live streaming. That's something which is catching up in China. A lot of tenants have started coming back and asking for lease restructuring in China. That's something which is already started. Social distancing is becoming a norm. And once we re-enter our offices in the next few weeks, that's something we'll need to be focused on in terms of having those rules of what should be the social distancing norms within these offices. A little bit touch on the co-working sector. What are we seeing in the co-working sector? Last year, some of you may remember, co-working was around 14% of the office absorption in India. So co-working still has a lot of advantages. That companies who are going to be going through a lot of challenges, especially financial challenges, given that their business is going to come down, are going to look for short-term leases. Co-working is going to be still the answer. Many companies are going to be looking for memberships. If they're having a distributed workforce, if they're a co-working plan with 5 centers in a city, you could work from all 5 by taking memberships. That's again co-working industry. Companies looking for spending lesser capex. Co-working again is the answer. Companies wanting a flexibility. Co-working will work well. So overall, enough pros for the co-working sector, but some of the cons for the co-working sector would be distancing. Co-working in business model itself is based on densification. How will that work from a distancing point of view? That's something one needs to be kind of looking at. Community, the entire sales pitch of co-working was community. That's something we need to wait and watch. If people actually want to be in communities, which was the trend before, but going forward, do people want to spend? Third is in a co-working setup, you do not know the kind of people who are around you. When you're going to an office, at least you know those people around you. So there is not too much of fear psychosis that, okay, I'm going to get a disease from him or not. At least that familiarity. That's a small challenge which I see working from a co-working center. These are very high-level observations. I think the entire co-working industry will go through a shift. They would look at newer designs, which would encourage social distancing. So there'll be newer interiors, newer designs, newer common area designs, which would all focus on distancing. So that's my take on co-working. What's our advice to landlords? I saw a number of landlords at this time in attending this. I think my first request to landlords is this is the most important time in terms of maintenance of properties. one needs to be going that extra mile to maintain your properties. Go out of your way to keep your quality tenants. Don't miss out on that. Be proactive to avoid negative absorption. If your park is 80% absorbed, go out of the way that it doesn't touch 70. This is the time to be proactive and avoid negative absorption. We've seen that back in 2008-9. People who understood the intensity the earliest were the ones who benefited the most, and not being in a denial mode that, okay, things can get from bad to worse, and let me make sure that let me avoid negative absorption. I think this is also a time, if you have the money, if you don't have too many cash flow issues, to invest a little bit more in the assets and kind of enhance the value of the asset. This is a great time for that. Landlords also need to understand that this is a new investment climate all around you. You need to adapt to that. That's again something which is very important. This is also a time to partner with service providers who have a proven track record, who you believe are long-term players in the industry more than ever before. That's important. And my request to landlords and developers on the commercial scene is to focus on your core business. A lot of times we've seen that people getting into 10 different asset classes. This is the time to get back and focus on your core business. Don't get swayed into multiple businesses. One should stay fully focused on their core business, their core strengths. Everybody has been talking about work from home and all the benefits work from home. Our internal view right now could change. Right now, our internal view is, I think, around 5 to 12% of the seats can actually move from working from home. There's various reasons for that. It's not easy to shift operation seats and technology seats, because a lot of operation seats and technology seats have dependence on office infrastructure. I'll love to hear from Sanjay on what he thinks about that. There is still a lot of dependence on office infrastructure. It's not viable for companies to set up large screens, UPSs, one in home, one in the office. When the employee comes back to office, do you move all those things? Do you have 2 different sets? It's not viable. The very recent companies have come to India to save costs. Right now, the government has been very flexible. SEZ and STPI regulatory bonding obligations is a big challenge. Right now it's flexible, but that will again be a challenge. It's not easy because the companies have got many benefits on tax over the years on STPI and SEZ bonding obligations. We have seen attending all these webinars in the last few weeks, doing video calls with our friends. Data speed has improved considerably in India, but still there are lots of challenges. We as a country don't have the concept of study rooms. Many of us stay in joint families. There are cultural issues from working from home, acoustics and sound quality when you're hearing someone. That's again a challenge. Leave alone other aspects like firewalls, like data confidentiality, like client proprietary technology. All that is becoming, and I was talking to a few companies, not tech companies, and they're like, how do I performance manage people when they're working from home? So all these are answers which is going to take some time to kind of figure out the answers. We believe office design is something which is going to significantly change going forward, not the ones which are already there. It's everybody's put in capex, but going forward, office designs will change. There'll be a lot more focus on air circulation, air filtration, and air ventilation. Companies would look at how they could reduce humidity levels. There's some research coming that humidity levels can, if you reduce your humidity levels, you can reduce infection. That's something which research is coming out. Screening protocols, not just when you're entering the building, but also when you're entering your specific office. Those fever checks, all that will become standard operating procedures. Many companies, landlords will try and see very early days, how can we eliminate touch points? You touch like a lifts button, like your doorknob, door handles, all that. How do you eliminate some of those? Not everything can be eliminated. Is that through voice activation? Is that through hand-free controls? Is it by using sensor technology? I think these are some new things which will come from a design point of view. I think also office interior design would change, where people don't have to face each other. A 4-day working week could happen where the person works 3 or 4 days out of office, maybe 1 day out of home. You stagger teams. These are things which companies tried out 4 weeks back, and I'm sure going forward the next few months also that'll happen. A lot of design will be focused on distancing. That's something which one needs to look at. How do you increase desks between people, that 2-meter rule? how do you have maybe arrows within the same office where people can walk in one direction, clockwise direction, and everybody follows that. Maybe have lanes in the office. So these are new things which we expect to happen. So that's my initial thoughts about what we feel could be some of the things you could see happening in the industry. With that, I'll hand it over to Sanjay to give his views.
Hey, thanks, Ramesh. I think you have set some great background. When I was listening to you, I didn't have much time to prepare because I've been running back to back nowadays. So I have taken a few notes, and I'm going to talk as things come to my mind. But I think at the end of my session, people would think that we have almost covered the same, aspects. I also had a hard stop at 5:45, so I'll jump off as soon as I finish my session. And also, this is what I'm going to say is completely from an individual perspective. Like every one of you, even I'm looking at the situation and thinking as to how does this then translate further into the various impacts that it will have on people, society, politics, and economy. So massive situation, right? It's not an understatement. Can't think of any parallels. Personally, I've been deeply interested in history. So from that perspective, though there have been many catastrophes, in the human history, be it Mongols, rampaging and killing over almost 40 million people in a very short span of 2-3 years, way back in 10th century. And then, we have heard about the Spanish flu and then the 2 world wars. But the fact is that the world was not as globalized those days as it is today. And as a result, now we have almost the entire globe impacted, serious implications on people, as I said, societies, world politics, economy. Most importantly, from an industry perspective, I would say that, 2 of the largest markets are heavily hit. So, which is US and Europe, right? So large part of our industries, including most importantly ITES, because, in a way I represent ITES, are heavily dependent on these markets. And if you take this argument further to particularly India's situation, from India perspective, we also need to see this in the light of, the back-to-back impact. So we had demonetization, and then after that you had this ILFS thing, and now this is COVID, right? So, I would say this is a profound impact. Also, as we are talking, we need to keep in mind that this is a live situation, right? This is still evolving. People are still talking about it. We have started hearing about, the resurgence of the infection. Today I saw news about Singapore. China is already talking about, another wave might be hitting in November or December. So this is still unfolding. There is a lot of uncertainty that is there and going to remain till the time we are successful in either developing a cure or a vaccine. So essentially what we are talking about is a new normal and the future, in that context. Right now, the focus everywhere is to manage this crisis. And at the same time, we have equal responsibility of managing the businesses that we run, right? So I guess it will take some time for every one of us to assess the impact of the situation. What is the real impact? So as I said, as we speak, we do have some assessment, and some of those things that you spoke about. But at the same time, I'm afraid, I don't think we have enough data points right now. For now, and as you were talking, even I'm looking at this situation purely from a short-term to long-term perspective. So short term is from anywhere 9 to 12 months, and then long term is 18 to 36 months. Obviously, in the short term, if you see, it's basically, since the situation is pretty active, it is pretty much wait and watch for everyone right now, right? So there is going to be a lot of caution for next 9 to 12 months because of this wait and watch. And obviously, this caution, in the environment is also going to impact the investment environment. And so when we go through this kind of a phase, I think somehow it is also about the theory of constraints, whereby you are start focusing, on the controllable factors, right? So some of the actions that I see, whereby one can look at pushing out spends, you will see, more controls around operational costs. I think everyone is talking about a graded or a phased manner approach in coming back to normal. So obviously, the office utilization is going to be low. The current situation is definitely going to impact the hiring. And one, basically, you're also not in a position to, in fact, onboard the new hires, right? So all this is going to impact how you use space, your space needs for some time. Obviously, as you said, you will see key real estate decisions getting either pushed or being put on hold. Any long-term renewals or rent changes, we'll see them increasingly being renegotiated, especially wherever there is exposure to short-term leases. And this takes me back to your point about co-working spaces, right, in particular. So we might see some challenges out there. But at the same time, I think it is not all, gloom and doom, right? I mean, there will be investments. Though the focus will change. The focus will change, for example, since the situation is still uncertain, as I said, any narrow window you get, I think most of the companies will try and enable more and more people to work from home, which means investments on new laptops, new desktops, internet. You will see massive adaptation of cloud. That is one thing that you can think about. Interactive technologies. I mean, just look at the digital transformation that has happened over the last 2 months, right? I mean, and not only at an institutional level, it is also at an individual level, right? So I think that is something interesting. Then you mentioned about e-commerce companies. I think they're ramping up their capacities. So digital, e-commerce, health, right? This is the mantra for next few months. So no wonder you see Amazon, Zoom, Netflix, their stocks doing so well. I mean, that's the only thing in green nowadays, because I track some of the stocks. Now, another interesting point about outsourcing, and my personal feeling is that somehow, some of these situations, they work in favor of outsourcing business. And this primarily happens because in this situation, companies across the world would try and optimize or cut their costs. At the same time, quite a lot of people can't work across the globe, right? So outsourcing is definitely one way. I mean, as far as my memory goes, during the 2008 slowdown, the outsourcing business continued to grow. May not be at the normal pace, but there was a good amount of work that was there, and I don't think that should change. Though, I mean, the other thing that we need to keep in mind is, given the situation, it is very difficult to say right now how much of that growth will actually translate into the real estate growth, right? Because almost all the organizations are definitely going to look at their operational and delivery models, right, in the situation. The other thing that we need to see is how does this lockdown impact the labor availability, the supply chain, and obviously the funding, right? So I think you also mentioned that. I also know that there are many of our developers who do have some sort of captive manpower in place, but it is also a fact that there is a lot of migrant workforce that has moved, and normally, I mean, you would say that it would take about 4 or 5 months for this thing to come back to normal. Then, lockdown, travel restrictions, obviously airports are closed, flights are impacted, supply chain, a lot of dependence on China and other countries. And even things like cement, for example, right? I mean, the manufacturing has to come back to full swing. So some of these things, impact construction. So obviously, the assumption is that it will take some time for all these things to get sorted out, and then construction to be back to full swing. So even I anticipate the projects getting delayed. I would even assume that there could be there is a possibility that there will be a shortage of A-grade space. In a short term. This might also open good opportunity for funds, right? The situation, and but obviously with more diligence right now. I'm sure there are investors who are keeping a close watch on the situation right now. But I'm not the best person to throw more light on this. Ramesh, you surely are probably best in the industry, so I guess you should talk more about it. Other factor, and I think this is a very, very important factor, and this is business resilience, and I guess you touched upon that. I think this pandemic will change the way people look at their business resiliency, the business continuity. Traditional business resilience was always focused on, let's say, resources and locations. But I think now, the time has come when it will rely more on automation, AI. So this would get a lot of push and a lot of investment. Moreover, we are hearing a lot of discussions about companies wanting to de-risk themselves from their exposure in China, right? So I think that's going to be a big discussion. I think we as a country have a very big opportunity here. But at the same time, I think that opportunity also depends on how quickly and successfully we manage and navigate through this current crisis. And this is not only important from this perspective, this is also important from the perspective of the large IT, ITS service offerings that we run from here, right? Because our clients bank on us, there's a lot of business that comes, some of the business critical processes are sitting here. So I guess everyone is keeping an eye on how India navigates through this. As a citizen, I think we are doing a good job so far. So let's hope that we continue to do a good job and we contain this quickly. But something like this or much bigger can happen again. I mean, there are already speculations that something like this might hit the 20 years or so. India mostly I see structured and unstructured real estate as an industry, but maybe probably this is a time where our real estate industry should actually look at business resilience as an integral part of their business strategy. So that is something I think everyone should think about. You touched upon health and safety. I think very, very important factor. As I said, I'm talking in my individual capacity, but Accenture has, I think, already said that every business is a health business from now on. So priority discussion for every organization. I think some of the measures being put in place today, you might see them continuing even after the vaccine is available or the cure is available. So even if things starts coming back to normal, it is possible that we need to think about the workspace very, very differently, right? So you spoke about social distancing, other health and safety protocols, temperature screening. I think something like this will become a regular thing. plenty of wellness protocols kicking in workplace policy as a FM offering, right? Special learning and training in this area will become very, very important. This will also need investment and a lot of investment. And I think this is also going to change the way we use and consume space. I'll not be surprised if our developers start designing their buildings or campuses keeping some of these things in mind. Office designs might go through change, as you said. I agree with that. A lot of new thinking is expected out there. It will also be interested to see how the co-working segment deals with the new reality, right? So I think this is the space where now, particularly given the impact, the situation and the impact now, organizations would be deeply concerned about some of the things that they do in the EHS space, and they would want to control the policies even at the senior most level, right? So that's where I guess the co-working space becomes very, very interesting. It's a multi-tenanted environment, at a floor, even at a cubicle level, right? From individual to corporate users. And I also agree with you that I think we will probably see some amount of consolidation happening in co-working space, and probably that will happen because of the funding and related issues. The other important aspect that I want to touch upon is work from home, which is obviously a very, very big discussion. And my view around this is that I think suddenly too many people have got very excited as not many people have suddenly started working from home. I would say that it is too early to assess the impact. We need to keep in mind that it's a forced situation where there was no other option but to have, push your people home. I mean, as I know, quite a lot of companies are still struggling to enable that. There are challenges around infrastructure, network coverage, bandwidth. We need to effectively assess how many employees can actually work from home. You mentioned that companies were asking for hotels, to put up their employees. I saw a lot of stress in employees, particularly who are staying in the PG accommodations and all that, right? So what we also need to understand that especially in ITS space, there is a lot of migratory workforce, right? And they'll go and they live, in shared echoes, in PGs. So some of those things we need to keep in mind. There are so many employees, they have moved to their hometowns, as their current places of stay were not conducive to work from home. Moreover, the government relaxed all the regulatory framework, and I think you spoke about that. So once we go back to normal, I guess some of these regulations will come back. Just give me a minute. My dog is a little excited.
Sanjay is back now.
Sorry about that.
Please continue.
Yeah. So once we go back to normal, some of these regulations will come back, right? Other thing that we need to keep in mind is the employee willingness to come back, right? And Ramesh, I think you spoke about that. As I said, the situation is still evolving, so organizations need more time to evaluate this, putting in right framework, right work from home policies. Productivity needs to be assessed. I'm not even sure if one can be allowed to drop as much of, as a space one wants to, right? There is a lot of employment in the real estate sector. I mean, there is a reason why STPI is still alive, right? So government needs to think about taxes, revenue, especially, when right now all the governments across the world are under pressure to spend more and more, and get the economy back on track. But having said that, I think at the same time, we should expect that some percentage of workforce will start working from home, 18 to 24 months time frame. Percentage is a matter of discussion. So you will see structured programs around work from home. At the same time, and that is the time probably you will see long-term actions on portfolio optimization, which can mean using more for same, which means that you're growing but using the existing portfolio to manage your growth. Same for less, which means negotiating long-term commitments or a better price, or better terms, or reducing your space, as a result of driving better utilization, right? So some of those actions we'll start seeing around that kind of a time frame. And final and most important point from my perspective is relationships, right? I think this is the time to be very close to your customer. How we conduct ourselves during these times will actually forge, long-lasting relationships. It will make or break relationships, right? This is the time to offer your best possible deal if you can, right? Or as you can negotiate with existing or potential, customers. I'm sure there will be discussions around rent deferments, delays, or discussion around CAM charges. And I also understand that one needs to protect one's interest, but we need to be extremely sensitive of the current circumstances and try and create a win-win situation, right? So these times need everyone to work very, 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 very collaboratively as everyone starts, a slow march to normalcy. So these are some of the things that I wanted to share. I need to jump off. It's already 6 and I need to jump to another call. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Sanjay. Sanjay, it was nice to hear you give lots of insights. You spoke about how US and Europe getting heavily hit could have a challenge on India. The big worry you said is relapse in some of these countries, which is very concerning. We all have to manage our business and manage the crisis. We haven't done that too many times in our careers. That's something which is different. You also were candid to admit that there's not enough data points to exactly forecast what's going to happen. Everyone is cautious right now. Everyone is having wait and watch. You said, Matt, there'll be more and more pressure on managing operational costs, which will come to CRE heads. Onboarding new hires is a challenge again. Companies are all looking at optimizing their real estate costs. It was good to hear from you that outsourcing business was still doing well in 2008, even when things went down. Labor availability, you confirmed, is a challenge. You feel because supply will get pushed out to next year, there's still going to be a shortage of grade A supply. Business resilience in BCP will become totally lot more focused on that. AI and automation will also get involved in BCP planning. You spoke about China de-risking be an opportunity for India. Very nice of you to say that every business is a health business going forward. And you spoke about how relationships matter in the long run. One needs to keep that in mind. And whatever are the challenges, both sides need to look at a win-win. So that is a lot of good points from that, Sanjay. I know you have to kind of go. Thank you for sparing your time on this. Lots of great insights.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, Tushar.
Yeah, thank you, Sanjay, and thank you, Ramesh. I would like to, Ramesh, we have already 200 questions in line. So I'm sure that in next half an hour, we can't cover all the questions, but we have Lara Vizare from US. She has one question for you. She's our next speaker also. So I'm just giving, taking her on the screen. Yeah, hi, Lara. Lara, welcome in this webinar.
Hi, Tushar.
Yeah, hi, Lara. Ramesh is here.
Hi, Ramesh. Nice to see you.
Thank you, Lara. Good to see you.
Thank you a lot for your insights. It was very nice. What I wanted to ask you is I was listening to a podcast of a New York Times columnist from the Harvard Business Review Future of Work, Justin Wolfers. And one thing that he tells is that the recovery of this crisis, that is much tougher than the Great Depression, will rely on the trust on the governments and the business leaders, because depending on how much the workforce and the population will rely on the leaders' orientation, they will be able to work together to recover very fast. So having said this and listening also what you guys were telling about relationship and everything, and seeing your leadership style and following you in LinkedIn, you are very communicative leader. Is there anything that you learned during this crisis that made you be closer to your team in communication that will remain after COVID, that would not be done if it would not be for the COVID crisis?
Thank you, Laura. I think what the last 4 weeks is taught us most is we need to be optimistic. We can't get carried away. There's so much of negative news which comes around in WhatsApp every day. I think we need to still stay positive and optimistic. That's lesson number one. Lesson number two, as leaders, I think last 4 weeks has been very stressful. It's not been easy. I know many leaders put a brave face in front of people, but it's important as a leader to be cool and have unlimited patience. I think what is also very important is accepting the magnitude of the problem. One challenge which many companies will face is let's say your average age is 30 years, and which means 12 years back when the global financial crisis, which was the last big crisis which happened, many of your employees were 18 years old. When you're 18, you're in college. So understanding the magnitude of these challenges is again key. I keep reminding myself every day morning that I need to balance short term and long term. Right now, you tend to get into a very short term oriented, like let me solve the problems of today, this week, this quarter. But you need to constantly keep telling yourself that don't forget long term. That's something and to look beyond the crisis. So these are some of the things which I'm trying to tell myself, not that you end up doing everything. It's still work in progress, and nobody has a clear map. Nobody in the world has a clear map. You don't know how next week is going to look, or the 1 month later how it's going to look. So all you can do is just be positive and think of both short term and long term at the same time. Thanks, Lara.
Thanks, Lara. Thank you very much for coming and asking the question. Ramesh, next, Mr. Abhishek Goenka is CEO from Coworks. He want to ask you one question.
Abhishek.
Yeah, Abhishek.
Good to see you, Ramesh. Not so much a question, more again an observation or a follow-on point to what you said about the impact of the crisis on flex spaces. And I think one of the comments Sanjay made is that would occupiers be comfortable sharing spaces with other occupiers, right? I think as you have seen yourself, most of the co-working operators have actually moved away from the concept as it was originally contemplated, where it was a bunch of young millennials in hoodies hanging out together, right? Today, most of the places are designed where each occupier has their own private workspace, and the sharing or coming together is really only in areas like a cafeteria or a common area to just de-stress and so on. So at least my own view, and maybe I'm biased, perhaps you can grant me that, is that actually the demand for flex and co-working spaces will dramatically increase because of companies wanting more flexibility in their operations, and also because of the decentralization. People will not want all 100% of the employees in a single space. Maybe if you just could give us some examples of specific conversations that you're seeing on this aspect.
Totally agree, Abhishek. Both things which we have seen in the last 1 month, companies wanting to be in different parts. CapEx, I spoke about that. Not everybody wants to spend money. and this is the maximum time companies are looking for from a flexibility point of view. So co-working becomes an automatic option to look at all three. The only concern right now is the density of co-working, which will eventually evolve. We are too early in the day to talk about that. What are your thoughts around the densification strategy of many co-working players?
So again, Ramesh, I think if you look at the whole design ethos, the overall per seat allocation in a co-working or flex provider, at least the more top-end ones like ourselves, is not very different from what a company follows in its own premises, right? It's just that the design is in a way that the seats are perhaps more tightly packed and there is more common areas. But the overall density is not very different. So I think depending on how the whole thing plays out and what kind of distancing norms are required, to me, whatever somebody follows in their own space can easily be implemented in a flex office or a co-working space as well. Overall, I agree that the whole design philosophy will change, but I don't think flex space are going to be at a material disadvantage to somebody's own space.
I agree, Abhishek. Very good point. Tushar, over to you.
Ramesh, we have next question from Mr. Chandresh. He's from Wipro. He's head for services. Chandresh, over to you.
Thank you so much for doing this. It was really a lot of good information. I think to your point that given that there is not too much of data available right now, I would look at more as a short-term rather than a mid-term or a long-term strategy for now. And given health is going to be one key criteria, which will have to be done as soon as even few colleagues start coming back to work. Having said that, I think what I want to really understand from you is in terms of in the short term, what are your key suggestions would be around optimizing the real estate cost, because there is a tremendous cost pressure in terms of managing your cost, given that is in most of the companies second or third line item in the P&L. Thanks.
I think last time around, a lot of companies, Chandresh, went into densification. We cannot do that now thanks to social distancing. I think this is a time when landlords and tenants need to kind of work together to look at if you're genuinely going through cost pressures, try and see if there are win-win solutions which can emerge out of that. Sale and leaseback is something companies who are asset heavy can look at, because institutional interest in India, a lot of institutional funds who are very active in India and will continue to be active in India going forward. That's definitely an opportunity. I spoke about various other things. This is the time to relook at all your contracts, to look for, is there a hidden saving potential somewhere in your contract? I saw a lot of companies, they see a lot of companies do that whenever you're going through tough times. But also one needs to kind of remember, Chandresh, that for an occupier, typically a real estate cost is between 4 to 8% of their revenues on an average. But for the developer, it's actually 100% of that's the only revenue he has. So whatever solutions emerge will have to be a win-win. I've seen that in the retail space in the last 3-4 weeks, massive confusion happening between retailers and mall developers. Everybody is at each other's throat trying to find solutions. There's no solutions which have come up. I think the industry will have to think and look for solutions, but there are also contractual obligations which one needs to look at. I've seen a few landlords reduce their common area maintenance costs in the last few days because obviously there are not enough usage of common areas, so that benefits that air conditioning cost, that savings that can be passed on to occupiers. So I think we need to sit and discuss that. There's no ready answer to that. But first advice would be to look at all your contracts to see if there are any cost saving opportunities line by line. Get expert of consultants and legal experts to look at that. That would be my first guidance.
Thank you, Chandresh, and thank you, Ramesh. Now we have next question from Sahil Bachani. He is CEO for Max Real Estate. Sahil, over to you.
Hi, Ramesh. Good to see you.
Hi, Sahil.
So, Ramesh, thank you for the insights. I think Sanjay and you both mentioned the aspect about grade A office space and that you see demand for grade A office space holding up. Obviously, this question is coming with vested interest, I have to admit. As you very well know, we've embarked on the journey for Max to emerge as a grade A office space developer in the NCR region. So my question is, could you just give us a little bit more context about how you think grade A and why do you think grade A office space demand will continue to hold up, particularly when we will see companies looking to shed cost and other aspects that your insights will be valuable there. Thank you.
Thanks, Sahil. I think Sanjay touched upon that every business is going to be a health business. Going forward. I think foremost what we have seen, it's been 4 weeks now. The first 2 weeks, companies were all focused not on productivity, not on savings. They were all focused on just one aspect, the health of our employees. Are all our employees safe? Are they working out of home? Not if they are productive out of home. Those are things which started coming in the third week. More than ever before we spoke about that, Sahil, is about wellness. I spoke about aspects like air filtration, air ventilation, air circulation. I think how many times have we've all worried about air quality outside? How many times have we actually worried about air quality inside? I think these are the things which will gain a lot more momentum. Safety, security, good facility management services. All that more than ever before. You are in a market where so many landlords do strata sales. They do a project, take it into bits and pieces and sell it to 100 investors. Imagine if you need to do an upgrade in a strata sale building for a air circulation issue which you're going to face or a air ventilation issue which you're going to face. So that's exactly the reason one should be looking at more grade A than ever before going forward. So I think the belief that you should invest in quality only increases post COVID-19 because health and wellness becomes all the more important than ever before.
No, thank you. Thanks so much, Ramesh. Truly appreciate that. It just reaffirms our belief, and it's very difficult to be optimistic in these times that we are trying to, and thus revalidating our philosophy of work well. So thanks so much for that.
Thanks for joining in, Sam.
Ramesh, we have next question from Amit Grover. He's from DLF. I'm taking him on the call. Sahil, you can just mute yourself and... All
right. Yeah, we're good. Can you hear me now?
We can.
Hey, Ramesh. Hi. Nice sharing you. And thanks for a very global and India perspective and very comprehensive. And as always, one is trying to also see that businesses should remain healthy for all of us. And therefore a question on a similar lines, although looking to ask Sanjay on the same context. I think it's interesting, and as you rightly said, everyone is trying to gauge a direction, and next 5-6 months will tell us what will be the final direction. But some of the initial views are contrary to, I'm just referring to the building designs and the changes in the building designs and the interior designs, which the organizations were driving in the last 4-5 years, which were flexi workspaces, more amenities in the buildings, making it more collaborative, literally puncturing the slabs to create internal staircases, making those 360-degree offices, and a lot of that was working on the core objective that companies, the only very reason the companies want employees to work and come to offices to collaborate, because with collaboration ideas will come in, and with ideas the innovation will come in, and future for human value creation is all about innovation, right? I mean, obviously, some of the reactions are natural that over the time, workspaces did get densified and all that stuff. So we've been hearing about de-densification. We've even heard about the word de-densification from larger companies like Google and others. But I think it's a matter of time that the core value creation which the offices or coming to office was offering, I think companies will go back and settle in some sense why that the final position can be a combination of both. a bit of de-densification, but at the same time, substantial opportunity for collaboration, because that's why you're coming to work. So just wanted your views on that.
Great point, Amit. With you coming in, I think we had India's biggest occupier, Sanjay from Accenture, and we also have the biggest developer DLF on this session. So great to have you. Design will become very, very important, Amit, going forward. How you're going to manage. I know I'm being repetitive, but that air circulation are things which we never kind of worried about. Very few, maybe 5% of the companies used to worry about all these things. Especially, you've seen a lot of IT services companies just trying to cut costs to whatever interiors come. Okay, 2,500 rupees interiors. Let's go ahead. I think all those things will go through massive change. But the challenge here again, Amit, is as profit margins are going to reduce for everyone in the next 1 year, people are going to think very frugal going forward. We are going to be thinking frugal as consumers. We're going to kind of try and save some money. So a lot of research saying that a lot of people will save money. I'm sure the companies will also want to save money. So that's a fine balance. I think that it's going to be a challenge. How much do you want to spend on all this, and how much do I end up saving? But health and wellness, there would be a lot more focus than ever before.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amit, for joining in.
Thank you. We have next question from Yash Gupta of RG Realties. Hi, yes. Over to you.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Hi, Ramesh. I can't see you guys, but I don't know if you can see me.
We can see you. Yes, go ahead.
Thanks. Yeah, Ramesh is always very insightful, and it's interesting you talk about air circulation and air filtration, because I remember I wrote an article on cleaning Delhi's air, one building at a time when we started One Horizon Center, given the fact that we're the cleanest air we thought in NCR in our building. So I'm glad that finally that focus has woken up, and we can do that in a very economical and cost-efficient manner. To be honest, I mean, we may spend a little bit less on our lobby stone, but a little bit more on our MERV filters that we put in, and I think those are the design changes that will happen. The question to you would be, on one side, yes, we talk a lot about the gloom and how people will want to rationalize their real estate costs. De-densification will help a little bit to the landlords with more space being taken up. But on the global scale, if there is going to be a little bit of a recession in the developed world, whether it's the US or Europe, as we're expecting it to, would not offshoring become a lot more interesting, especially to places like India, which have proven themselves out? And do you think that will lead to a greater demand for Indian real estate in the medium term? I'm talking about, let's say, 1 to 3 year time frame.
Can't agree more, Yash. Very, very valid point. I was getting a little worried 2-3 weeks back in terms of how things are evolving, and with so much of negative news around. So I spoke to 3 CEOs of, they would be in the top 5 employers in India in terms of global in-house centers. Some of the banks who have large centers around the country. All 3 of them said the India outsourcing strategy, especially from a global in-house center, that's irreversible. All of them have 3 to 4 year plans which they make. They don't go by 6 months or 3 months. So they felt, okay, in the next 3 to 6 months we may not hire too many people. If you're looking at, let's say, a 300,000 square feet, that may come down to 250,000 square feet. But they felt India always is in the limelight in a positive way whenever companies in US go through stress, and they felt this is only going to continue. Very valid question and very timely question. Yash, I wouldn't have been able to give you this answer 2 weeks back, but I spoke to these people just to figure out what are their plans. Even now, none of them are actually concerned about concentration risk in India, even though they may be having 20,000, 30,000, 50,000 people in some cases. They still feel in India, given that there are 4 to 5 cities they can go to, there's enough space and room for growth. So you're absolutely spot on, Yash.
Thank you. Appreciate the answer.
Ramesh, we are getting a common question from a lot of attendees that what going to be the technology role in coming future? Because JLL is already doing a lot of technology initiatives and they are already ahead of the curve. So how real estate perspective will change post-COVID with technology perspective?
I think, Tushar, the very fact that we are all connected on technology today and not sitting face to face, I think technology adoption is going to become a lot more. The other day I was reading some joke, there's given 3 options. Who enabled tech adoption? Was it Microsoft, Google, or COVID? And I know it's not a funny thing, but these are the 3 options. I think COVID is only going to increase tech adoption of all companies, and prop tech, we believe, would become more important than ever before. You heard Sanjay speak about how aspects like AI and automation will be used a lot more for businesses. I spoke a little bit about how technology would work from a people not wanting to touch different aspects of an office. Now, all that will fall into place only if you have the best of prop tech solutions. JLL is committed to being the best tech company in the real estate sector, and our focus on technology in terms of offering technology solutions would continue going forward.
Yeah, so in terms of occupier behavior post COVID, like how do you see that occupier behavior will change? And already Sanjay has highlighted this a lot of points, but in your view, as a consultant, you are serving most of the occupiers in the country. What kind of behavior change you will see in the occupiers?
I think the initial first few months is going to be focused on re-entry of work. How do we make sure when people re-enter work, they have safe, secure places to be in? I think the second challenge which corporates would have is many of them would go through margin erosion, which means the CFOs are going to be taking charge. The last few years, we have seen the head of HRs taking charge, but going forward, the CFOs will take charge. They will look at every line item to look at how costs could be under control. I think that'll be the second thing. I think overall, over a period of time, there would be a lot of changes happening with regards to the behavior. We spoke to how just simple design aspects, like how are you going to face each other in the office. We all thought that you need to be close to each other, looking at each other. Right now, companies during this 4 weeks, we've seen people are monitoring very closely how work from home is working. They're kind of trying to accelerate. Some of them are facing challenges. Sanjay mentioned some of the challenges which typically we face. I think there will be supply chain disruption going forward, and that supply chain disruptions will also impact on how companies would look at from a medium term. How do you ensure optimizing your real estate resources, because you're spending money on that. So I think a lot more specs around safety, which we discussed, around health. These are some of the things we expect from a change of behavior. But the most important thing is, Tushar, when people re-enter work on in May or June or whenever that happens, I think that should be the current focus. And how look at cafeteria designs. Cafeteria designs are going to change going forward. There's already we've heard of some state governments thinking about how do auditoriums, how do you have seats for auditoriums, how do you have seats for restaurants, how do you space them. There could be rules coming out. I don't know if there'll be rules coming out for space within offices. Do we need to change the national building code to reflect on that? Early days, but a lot of these changes will happen.
Ramesh, we all are at home and we are missing, the malls. Like, at least, everybody go to in a month time or maybe 2 weeks time, we go to a movie, we go for, shopping. I think we are missing that element completely in our life. What do you see about, retail? A lot of retailers are here. I'm sorry that we could not come, took their perspective in picture, but people are really tense. Like, a lot of retailers are, a lot of people, those who are having large inventories and big, retail chains, people are having 70 or 80 stores. They are really living in very uncertain time. What is your perspective on that?
I think the landlords need to announce temporary rental cuts. I don't think there is an option, even where the retail industry starts. There's a lot of pressure on landlords. from retailers to reduce rentals. The good thing is the landlords have a lot of data of who are the tenants they want to keep, they don't want to keep, because there are a lot of technology which the landlords have used in the last few years, especially the bigger ones. F&B, there's a massive amount of pain. If you look at F&Bs in the corridors, F&Bs on highways, on roads, that's suffering even more. Retailers are trying to launch their own apps to try and see how they can deliver orders. Retailers are right now they're going ahead with properties which they're doing fit outs. But if you look at the priorities of a retailer today, his first priority would be to pay salaries to his employees. His second priority would be to pay suppliers. The third priority would be to pay rentals. The fourth would be to complete his active projects, and lastly on expansion. So I think from an expansion point of view, even all the other priorities, I think developers, retailers would go slow on expansion. Many retailers are looking at how they could use the force majeure clause for the rent abatement. Capex, like an office, is going to be even a bigger challenge in retail. F&B players are definitely going to find it tough to pay rentals going forward, and like an office, decision making is going to get very slow. So revenue share dynamics is something which is going to change. Previously it was revenue share, minimum guarantee, all these numbers will go through a massive change going forward. Rentals, there would definitely be rental pressures on reducing. There would be a downward trend in retail rentals. But good news is retailers are hopeful that things will improve by Diwali. That's when a lot of sales happen. Good thing it happened in a lean period, and when things start looking up, I think by then it will be time for Diwali when a lot of Indians shop. Multiplexes, again, concern. I think it'll be the last ones to open, given the social distancing issues which people face. But I think aspects like value fashion will recover faster than your premium fashion or lifestyle fashion, given that these are essentials. So these are some of the things. I think retail mall owners also need to worry about hygiene more than ever before. We discussed that in office also. So these are some things one should keep in mind.
Ramesh, we have very less time, but I would like to ask you 2-3 small questions, and then we'll end up the session. Just how do you see change in behavior of consultancy companies like your company, the IPC, and project management companies? Because like after post-COVID, there will be a lot of cost pressure on companies. There can be two scenarios: either occupiers will be too much dependent on consultancy, or maybe they will save the cost and go directly to the solution. So what do you see a future for consultancy companies?
I think consultants, our sales pitch is obviously consultants save 6 times more money than what they are paid. So we've been around for the last 260 years as a company, which means we have seen many COVIDs and pandemics and world wars and recessions and downturns. So I'm sure we'll continue for a few more years. So reasonably steady, stable company. But what are we doing with regards to clients? Obviously, time is of the essence. Time is money. So encouraging our teammates how they can service clients a little faster without dropping the ball on client satisfaction. That's very important. Stay focused more on your high potential and high profitable clients. That's something. It's not a time when you can service everybody. You need to pick and choose who are the best clients you want to work with. We are also trying to understand from clients what matters to them most in these kind of situations and how their businesses will evolve. Something we are trying to find out. Again, like Sanjay rightly said, it's a very early days now. There's so much of discussions going on in the last 4 weeks in a company which has been around for the last 260 years. I'm sure we will evolve. We have very strong leadership globally. And more than ever before, what we are trying to do is a large firm, close to 12,000 real estate professionals work for us in India. And there's a lot more push, which I'm personally trying to do, is engage more with clients more than ever before. So more frequency of meetings. If you're meeting a client once in 3 months, can you make it once in a month? If you're meeting a client once in a month, previously, can you meet him once a week? And technology is definitely helping. You don't need to spend too much of time, 2 hours in Sakinaka Junction trying to worry about traffic. You could meet clients straight away. So that's some of the things which we are trying to do, Tushar.
Thanks, Ramesh. I'm trying to wrap up, but Mona Shukla, she's CEO for Corporate Edge. She's having one question with her, so I'm just allowing her to come on the screen. Yeah, Mona, over to you. Mona, are you there?
Thanks, Tushar. Am I audible?
Yes, very much audible. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thanks, Ramesh. I think it has been an interesting conversation. It was good to hear Amit as well as Yash, and I think it's all about testing times. One is wanting to understand the impact on the real estate sector, especially when one really needs to, bring in a lot of technology aspect, bring in the premium aspect of having much more quality buildings, as you said, and obviously the kind of facilities which we would do. And I've been reading about 6 feet kind of social distancing within the office as well. So what I would want to hear it from you as to how do you perceive with, bringing in quality, sustaining, and yet bringing the real estate costs down for, the occupiers. How does it work for everybody?
I think it's a catch-22 situation. Companies are going to be under so much of cost pressure as the economy downturn happens. At the same time, they need to be focusing more on health and safety and taking care of their employees. I think, Mona, you touched upon it. I think all the more important of use of technology to reduce costs. We are looking at so many digital products. Now you look at a real estate transaction that can be broken into 12 different pieces. We're looking at how we can kind of automate each of these pieces so that the reliance on people resources can kind of come down. That's one way of reducing costs using digital tools. I think that'll further continue, but that's again one of the reasons why margins of companies will go down. And as landlords, I think landlords and tenants need to come together to work on win-win solutions. All the more important because of that. It's not an easy question to answer. On one side, costs will go up. On the other side, look at us now. We have so many employees who are going to be coming in. We are also under cost pressures. So I think time will give us the answers for those questions.
Ramesh, thank you very much for answering this question. Last 2 questions. After that, we will just finish. Before I come to my question, I would like to tell you that 1,250 people have attended this session. First time in real estate industry, 1,200 people on one real estate conference. That's a great. People are eager to learn. People are eager to get more knowledge, I think. Ramesh, I'm just, yesterday I was interviewing Karan Birwani. He is CEO for WeWork. And we had a very candid discussion. And he said that one thing which is coming up very aggressively is fit out on rent. People will be avoiding the cash burn. What do you see? What kind of trends will be coming? Will it be more serviced office, more co-working, or maybe it's a fit out on rent? People will go for a leasing of fit out. What do you see?
I totally agree with Karan on that view. A lot of CFOs, like I said, are worried about that line item. I've been in 2 discussions where the occupiers have come and asked the landlord, can you do the fit outs for me, at least for this year? Next year, I'll buy it back from you with a tax efficient structure.
Yes.
Cash is king going forward. Everybody's looking at conserving cash. And I think that's one of the things which will favor the co-working industry also. So Karan is spot on. Like I said, been talking about it many times in this discussion. CFOs are looking at, and real estate costs are maybe the 2nd or 3rd largest cost item. And even if you write it off over 5 years or 6 years or whatever, some companies write it off over 3 years. There's a huge amount of sudden cost on capex which they have to invest in. A lot of companies spend a lot of money on technology also these days, technology in terms of interiors. So companies are looking at ways to reduce capex. There is no second thoughts around that, and that's why the co-working sector will have its benefits.
Ramesh, Mr. Bill Jones, he is a global real estate head for Rio Tinto. he joined here from Singapore to ask you one question. That how much time will this will take to settle down everything, like co-working? Like there is a huge people are bleeding because of the cash burn, and like their expenses are already on, but they are not getting the revenue. So Bill is asking this question to you. He can't come on the Zoom. He is having some technical issue, but he is asking that question to you.
The question is, how long will it take for the co-working sector?
Yeah.
I touched upon that. The co-working sector will have to go through a lot of consolidation. Like I said, 400 players. Everybody was becoming a co-working operator. If I had 20,000 square feet and my niece was coming from US, she also became a co-working operator. That was the industry had to consolidate, and this will just lead to further consolidation. The other challenge is liquidity. There's not much of liquidity. The government needs to infuse some liquidity. Today's RBI announcements were a step in the right direction on that in terms of infusing some liquidity. I think that's more than ever before very important. But we also need to remember that 80% of Indian real estate is residential, and that 80% is going through huge amount of stress and is expected to go through more stress in the next few months, because when everyone starts worrying about job losses and salary cuts, the last thing on their mind would be going and buying a home. So I think the stress in the sector will continue, and that will have a rub-off effect also on commercial and other segments like co-working.
So Ramesh, last question, or I should say second last question. I'm following you, I'm seeing your journey, like, I'm seeing that, you are handling the largest real estate firm, consultancy firm in India. As you have already said, that leadership style, you have already, said that. I want to understand that how people should behave in, a small player, those who don't have much cash in their pocket. The situation is like 2-3 months going to be very tough. So like, if you take example of our kind of company, those are mid-sized companies, what kind of behavior, change you should recommend, you will recommend to, our kind of mid-sized companies?
I think more than ever before, monitoring becomes very important. Frequency of control becomes very important. I know typically millennials don't like too much of control around them, but these are very, very difficult times, so that frequency of control has to increase, frequency of monitoring has to increase. I think instead of giving a sense of fear to your teammates, I think what becomes more important is creating a sense of urgency, more than sense of fear. Cash is king. Every rupee counts. I think you can't afford to have data issues. Some of the big challenges we face in India is fees not coming on time. I think that's crucial. And I think frequent communication within your organization. It's always better to over communicate in these times than under communicate. I think these will be some of the things we are trying to do. Again, work in progress. It's been quite a busy few weeks. So
thank you, Ramesh. I think it is quite tiring for you. It is like 1 hour 47 minutes, and we would like to finish here. But really, really, thank you for coming on this session, giving us great, perspective and great view on industry and aspect of leadership, and engaging, all the people from all the sides. Anisha, over to you.
Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, Tushar, for taking us through this interesting webinar on what are the trends for commercial real estate. Ramesh mentioned that there will be delays, but office space is one which is expected to bounce back at the fastest pace and the fastest clip. Thank you so much for joining us, Ramesh. Now, for all those in the webinar, we have a poll running, so we request you all to please give us your feedback. Do put in your input on this poll, and do follow us on our LinkedIn page for premium content and the latest trends for the workplace, the latest updates on our events and webinars, and insights from thought leaders. Our next 2 episodes in this series of webinars will focus on leadership development. Make sure you don't miss out on them. Keep a track of our LinkedIn page and do block your calendars. Thank you everybody for watching. Thank you, Ramesh. Thank you, Tushar, and thank you to Sanjay. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you, Ramesh. Would you like to say something for the workplace trends?
Very good initiative, Tushar. When you first connected with me a couple of weeks back, I don't know, you'll manage to get 1,300 people to participate in this webinar. And thanks for keeping it very focused. It was all focused on office. It was not generic, and you managed to get some great guests. It was great to see Sahil, Amit, Yash, all titans of the industry coming to participate in this. And I thought Sanjay also spoke really great job in organizing this, and look forward to more events like this.
Thank you everyone. Thank you for joining us, and thank you Ramesh. Thank you Anisha. Thank you.